The thing about making any game system is that no matter how hard you try, there's going to be some mistakes, errors, and inconsistencies. So as DMs, we have to figure out what we're going to do when we look at things in our books that clearly don't seem right. For example, back in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons era, there was a book that came out where instead of doing points of damage, a lot of spells were doing points of the wizard. Now, there's no game mechanic for how much the wizard you can take, but it's very obvious that it's supposed to say damage, so you rule it as damage. This is what is called rules as intended. Not specifically what's written down in the book, but what seems to be clear what you're supposed to take out of it, even if the wording isn't entirely correct. However, some people will continue to persist, even if that means that you can't do something that you really feel like you should be able to. If the words are written in that way, you are going to follow them as they were written. This is called rules as written. As you can imagine, this can lead to some really weird stuff happening in your games. So today we're going to talk about the weirdest rules as written spell rulings in D&D 5e. Man, is that hard to say. And before I start this video, I just want to say I got a lot of this information from a Reddit post I will leave in the description. And if you want to support this channel, the best thing you can do is hit that subscribe button. Now, let's get on with the video. You know what Detect Magic is, right? It's a spell that lets you see if there's any magic in the nearby area. Maybe your DM has even flavored it as a blinding light if you're doing it in a room that has a lot of magic. However, this is not how Detect Magic works at all. When you cast Detect Magic, all it does is tell you that there's magic around you, and then you have to use another action to see what it actually is. Of course, a lot of the time when you're using Detect Magic, you're doing it outside of combat, so particular actions don't really matter. However, I do find it interesting that the way the spell works, that it just tells you that there is magic nearby, it seems quite useless, especially because if you're casting the spell, first of all, there are pretty good odds that you or your party have magic on them, and it's pretty likely you're casting it because you know there's magic in the room and you're just trying to figure out what's magical. Okay, guys, watch out. I sense that there's magic in this room. Let's see if I can figure out where it's coming from if I just observe. Well, shit. You tend to see players misunderstand first level spells a lot, mainly because when they're new players, they don't really know how the mechanics work, so it's easy for them to miss certain details. And if they're an experienced player, well, how often as an experienced player do you actually go back and read how Firebolt works? Or do you just know that it does 1d10 damage? Yes, even your most common spells you could be getting wrong. For example, Magic Missile. Oh, so you think you know how Magic Missile works, don't you? You roll 1d4 plus 1 per missile. It's 3 missiles at first level, and an additional missile at every level. That means if you roll a second level Magic Missile and you target it all on one person, you roll 4d4 plus 4 damage. No. Rules as written, you roll 1d4 plus 1, and that is the damage that every missile is going to do on your turn. It's a slight difference, but it does affect the statistics. It means you're much more likely to roll high, and also much more likely to roll low. The average remains the same, but mechanically, there is a difference. Now, if you think it's up to interpretation, Jeremy Crawford says that rules as written, it's 1d4 plus 1 times the amount of missiles. And if there's anything more true than rules as written, it's rules as Crawford. Now, funnily enough, I actually think this is a better way of running Magic Missile. It's much easier to record the damage, especially at higher levels when you might have a lot of missiles. So I actually do think that rules as written, it's a lot easier to manage. However, people like rolling a lot of dice. You know what? Making this video has made me realize that I don't really know how all of the spells work. Next thing you're gonna tell me is that I don't know how invisibility works or something. Oh, fuck. Invisibility has two properties. First, you cannot be seen without the aid of magic, And 2, enemies have disadvantage on attack rolls against you, and you have advantage on attack rolls against them. So if you're in a fight and an enemy turns invisible, if you don't want disadvantage on them, you must first cast See Invisibility, right? No, because even if you cast See Invisibility, you technically still have disadvantage. This is because your ability to see them covers that first marker. Now you're able to see them with the aid of magic. However, they still have the invisible property, meaning that the second rule still applies. You have disadvantage on attacks against them. Of course, this is not how you should run Invisibility, as it makes See Invisibility a useless spell and makes a spell like Fairy Fire simply better, and it's a lower level. Even when I've seen this fact pointed out in games, I have never seen a DM go, oh yeah, we're gonna do rules as written for that. They always say that you don't have disadvantage if you can see them. Did you know that Eldritch Blast is a detect mimic spell? This is because Eldritch Blast specifically says that it can only target a creature. Other spells, like Firebolt, say that they can target a creature or an object. That means that if you walk into a room and you think that there's a mimic, the best thing that you can do is to point and try to cast Eldritch Blast. If it doesn't work, you don't damage the object, and you know that there's no mimic. This also kind of has the implication that you can't just fire Firebolt into the air because you need an object or a creature to be targeting at. That's just one of the weird things about spells in 5e. And to end this off, I want to talk about the rules as written rule that I disagree with the most, because it affects my favorite class, the Paladin. This is how the rules of Divine Smite are written. Starting at 2nd level, when you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you can expend 1 spell slot to deal radiant damage to the target in addition to this weapon's damage. So what's the issue here? Let's try to break it down. The way that this book describes a punch or a kick is a melee weapon attack without a weapon. Okay, so when I was editing this, I realized that this is actually kind of complicated and difficult to explain, so I thought instead of just showing the text on screen expecting you to understand it, I would go through what I'm actually talking about. So, in the melee attacks section of the player's handbook, it says, instead of using a weapon to make a melee weapon attack, you can use an unarmed strike, a punch, a kick, a headbutt, or similar forceful blow. Now, what that means specifically for this case is that an unarmed strike is a melee weapon attack. That's what this is saying. You can use an unarmed strike to make a melee weapon attack, or you could use a weapon to make a melee weapon attack. And why does this particular wording matter? Well, let past me explain it to you. That means that you are allowed to use it on a Divine Smite. It's a melee weapon attack that you are doing without a melee weapon. Now that's good. I want to do a Divine Slap. However, there's an issue. Because the damage gets added to the weapon and you don't have a weapon, you burn a spell slot and no damage gets done. At least that's specifically how the rules put it. However, improvised weapons are still weapons, meaning that you could use Divine Smite with a fork or a chair or a dead goblin. However, you are not allowed to Divine Slap. And that's where we have to go to Rule of Cool. Do the rules say that I'm not allowed to use the Divine Smite on a punch? Yes, they do. Do I want to smite a bitch with my bare hands? Of course I do. Could it technically break the game with a Paladin Monk multiclass? Maybe. However, is it not worth it to allow you to smack someone with the power of God? Most definitely. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, the best thing you can do is to click that subscribe button to stay updated on future releases. I actually have a whole bunch of other stuff that I wanted to talk about that I couldn't get to, so don't be surprised if you see another video like this in the future. Thank you for watching, and this is the end of the video.